Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 213 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about getting beyond the facade, unveiling the curtain, getting a behind-the-scenes look at other criminal defense lawyers' firms, and why that is such a valuable opportunity. This is a little bit strange for me. I haven't done many of the solo episodes here in the recent months with the Warriors of the Courtroom series that we have been doing, highlighting some of the young leaders of criminal defense in North Carolina. And one of the main real values to me of talking in these interview formats with these various lawyers that practice across the state is getting kind of a behind the scenes look at how they are running their law practices. How are they handling criminal cases, and what can I take away from that? How are they bringing people into their culture, both clients and team members, employees? How are they marketing for cases? These conversations have given me that behind the scenes look, and obviously you get the benefit of that as well as you're listening to that behind the scenes look at how these lawyers have built their firms, how these lawyers have gotten to be better in the courtroom, how they've created a better culture, understanding from their perspective what some of the big hurdles that are facing criminal defense lawyers in 2023 and 2024 look like. So looking forward and looking backward. So I wanted to take a minute to reflect on a issue that I faced in the early days of opening my own practice, and really a simple solution, a simple way to fix that problem or that issue, but that has unbelievable impact on your business. So I'll kind of just lay out the problem that I faced in very, very simple and maybe dummy terms. I mean, this is something that sounds so silly, but this was a real problem. And it was this: when I looked at other law firms, I was trying to find basically a standard against which my practice could be measured. If you're trying to improve your practice or figure out where you should be, or kind of assess how you are doing in business, you have to have some sort of a measuring stick. You have to figure out some way that you can say, I'm either tracking in the right direction, I'm making progress, or things are not going well. There's not been enough evolution over time. And so, in the early days of practice, the way upon which I was measuring myself was almost exclusively external, by looking at the external aspect of other lawyers and law firms. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, basically, what could the public see with regards to how they were running their law practices? I was in that same position. And so if you want to gauge the success of a person, a lawyer that is in private practice, there are a number of metrics for doing that. There's a number of different ways that you could say, well, this is an indicator of success. Easy indicator of success might be, how do they dress, right? I mean, are they wearing a three-piece suit, or are they wearing tennis shoes into the courtroom? Now, not all of these metrics are on an equal playing field, and I also don't want it to come across that these metrics are bad, because while I think the external uh, indicators of success are not at all the real indicators that we should be looking at, there is some level of truth or importance or takeaways that we can glean from external gauges of success. But how do they dress? Um, how many cases do they have on the docket? One of the indicators early on to me in the courtroom was, well, it looks like this lawyer consistently has one DWI on the docket, and this lawyer over here has five DWIs on the docket, and that's consistent. That's not something that is back and forth this day versus that. So they must be doing something to generate that level of cases, that level of client calls. Another way that you might evaluate a lawyer's kind of success, or are they kind of trending in the right direction, is how do they communicate in court? Are these people that eloquently explain the circumstances, facts, and case law as it applies to their client's situation? Are they able to articulate and bring new, imagined arguments to the table? Do they have a really solid understanding of the current statutory and case framework? That was obviously indicative that this is somebody that has gotten really good at what they do. Are they teaching CLE or speaking at bar meetings? Do other people respect what they have to say about a subject? Other external communicators, how do others speak about them? When they're not in the courtroom, when they're not sitting in the attorney lounge area, how are other lawyers talking about this person? Is it with a tone of respect and admiration, or, is it a mocking tone? Is this person really being made fun of when they are not in the room? Where's their office located, right? Is it, in the lawyer building downtown, or is it out in the middle of the country? And there's nothing wrong with these. So again, this is not to say that one is even better than the other. There's actually all kinds of indicators that would suggest that maybe being the only lawyer in a geographic area might be the best thing you could do from a marketing perspective. So again, these were just external indicators that I was looking at. Do they appear to enjoy their practice? Is this a lawyer that's constantly bitching about their clients and their life and the practice of law? Or is this somebody that seems positive and energized about walking into the courtroom? That was a real indicator to me of success, because you really, to me, can't be successful at anything if you hate it. I mean, you're not going to last in that industry or environment if it's not something that brings you a lot of joy. What does their marketing look like? So again, just, externally, in terms of what can the public see? What could I see? I went on, dozens of criminal defense lawyer websites and looked at how they had laid out their pages and organized information, and what practice areas are they focusing on? How do they introduce their teams? Direct mailings. I've known other lawyers that have done this as well, but you get a client that has a speeding ticket and got 15 letters. Hey, can you bring me the letters that you got from other lawyers? And you gauge, how is this other lawyer advertising for these services? What kind of fees are they putting their fees in the letter? What does all of this look like? Billboards, what other forms of advertisement do you see? And then obviously in our current situation, social media, you can see a lot of kind of as a public facing sign of marketing, the social media side of things. So, in terms of evaluating the way that I wanted to build my practice, it was very much based on this external kind of curtain up view of other lawyers conducting their business and trying to kind of copycat those other lawyers to the best of my ability. You know, dress the way that successful lawyers dressed. Go in and study the law so that I could argue the way that the successful lawyers, in my opinion, argued, looking at their websites and trying to kind of frame my website, in ways that appeared to be working for the, state's most successful criminal defense law firms, trying to kind of put myself out there in speaking situations. So these were kind of external markers of success that I was trying to copy. But at the end of the day, this was still all very much surface level. If you want to have a true measuring stick, you need to get beyond the facade. If you want to have a true measuring stick to say, am I doing business the right way, then you need to get beyond the facade. And I think that it's so interesting as to why we don't engage each other more frequently in helping each other get beyond the facades of our business. And I think one of the main reasons that this does not happen is a worry or a concern that you're going to give up your secret sauce. Or you might even, maybe you're more humble than that. Maybe it's like, I would love to know how this other lawyer is doing so well in business, but surely they're not going to give me their secret sauce. There's something that they're doing to where they have 10 DWIs when I walk in the courtroom and I have one every 2 weeks. What is they've got this secret recipe for success, and they're not going to be willing to share that with me. And so what I have found as I started, kind of engaging more with other lawyers in the conversation of the business of law, what I noticed is that nobody had the secret sauce. Nobody had the secret recipe, the one thing that made their business work when nobody else's could in that same way. The one true separating or distinguishing factor that allowed them to operate at just such a different level when it came to how their business was competing. There was no secret sauce. There's no quick fix. There's no recipe to overnight success. The thing that I learned was that it was this devil in the details situation where basically when I would talk with other lawyers about, the way that they were operating their law firms, there was a whole laundry list of hundreds of things that were contributing to their success. Now, we didn't talk about that all at one time, but instead of it kind of being this, oh, there's this one little thing that is going to have this unbelievable impact in the bottom line of my firm, it was more a recognition that there is just, hundreds of tiny little steps in the right direction that can collectively have a big impact on your firm over the course of years and years of improvement. There was no secret sauce. And so, even small things can seem, incredibly nuanced. Even small things, the things that were very simple and seemingly straightforward became much more interesting as I started to have these conversations. So take, for instance, something like, answering phones. We have been in basically like a 2-year program, a 2-year process of how do we answer phones better? And I have talked with a number of lawyers about how to answer phone calls better. I've done a training course with a lawyer coach about how to improve intake. I have visited two, I would say, prestigious law firms and basically watched how they answered phones. Again, it seems simple. It seems like you could just say, hey, newbie, let's call this person Joe. Hey, Joe, I'm glad that you're on the team now. I need you to answer my phones. Pick up the phone, say Minnick Law, and then you should be good to go. Let me know if you need me to respond to any messages that you take, right? Like that seems simple enough. I hired this person, Joe, to answer my phones, and now, he's off and away answering phones. Everything should be going great, right? Wrong. There is a lot of complexity in answering phones the right way to get the information in the fastest and most convenient way from the client's perspective, to get the information to the lawyer that the lawyer needs, to generate the right type of follow up and after action plan to where the client is interested in then working with you and actually hiring you to represent them on a case. There is a ton of nuance. There's no secret sauce in answering the phones correctly. It's a bunch of little pieces. So, I asked many lawyers, what is the script that you're using for answering phones? How are you communicating with somebody? What types of information are you getting for these different types of cases? How can you effectively use an auto attendant? Is there a way to effectively use an auto attendant for certain types of calls, for after hours situations? What does that look like? How have you made that work in your practice? How do you hire for a receptionist or intake position? What are the qualities that you're looking for? What are the requirements to getting to an interview phase? What questions are you asking in an interview? What follow up are you doing in the interview? Who needs to be in the interview to decide whether or not to hire this person? There have been, tons of changes, and I've got a whole laundry list more of different considerations. But one of the things that I found in terms of hiring for our intake team is that I, generally speaking, am not the best person qualified for making a hiring decision. Not a good people reader. I'm not somebody that is thinking about the details and the nitty gritty. I, get a very non-trustworthy gut feeling about somebody and say, hey, let's go with that person. That's a terrible way to hire. I should not be in charge of hiring. And so that was something that we kind of found out through this process. How do you track your phone calls? This was, I went down and toured the iTickets office in Chapel Hill, and the way that they had basically analytics for real-time tracking of incoming phone calls changed the way that we look at phone calls. I had my partners emailed or texted earlier today, and one of them said, it seems like the calls have been down. Um, you know, is that accurate? Now, in the past, before we were actually tracking phone calls and running reports for that, it would have been very much like, I don't know, maybe they are down, or maybe it's down. It feels like it's been down a little bit, but there was no numbers to support. So after he sent that text, I went on to our Intermedia account and basically was able to look at what have the calls looked like day over day since February. We could go back further if we wanted to, but just to give a good slice of recent call volume, what has it looked like day over day? So again, that all came from going and visiting iTicket's office and seeing what are they doing. The scripting and the way that phone calls were answered and people were being helped was very much a result of going to Brian King's office, his main center, his intake center, and basically watching how they answered phones. How is this working? How are you guys keeping up with the volume of calls that we know are coming into a firm that is Brian's size? What legal software is conducive to intake? You know, how are you actually using your software to start opening a case file? Do you do that in every situation? With every call that comes in, is there a new matter created, or are there criteria for deciding whether or not this is going to result in an actual lead matter that gets generated? How do you outsource intake, or does it make sense to outsource intake? We've used back office Betty's off and on, which is basically an outsourcing of reception to some extent, off and on over the past 3+ years. And we've gotten a lot of value from using them both in real time, but also learning how they did things. Because why? Well, if Joe, when you hire Joe to come in and answer your phones, he doesn't say, you know, how would you like me to respond to this? What prompt do I give if the client asks me this question? He just says, okay, I'll start answering questions. And then as calls come in and he doesn't know the answer, he sticks his head in the door and says, Jake, tell me how you would respond to this, or is this somebody that we would want to set up a consultation for? It's a lot of back and forth and just kind of figuring out trial by fire. That's how many of us do that initial intake filling position, that initial reception filling position, administrative assistant position, is just find somebody, hey, answer the phones. You do it however you want to do it. When we moved to back office Betty's, they had a very specific script that we had to fill in the gaps for, so that they could basically have anybody on their team that knows nothing about our law firm ask the right questions to be able to take a very detailed message. They could open up new leads for us. It was incredible. And it's all because they were operating on a system. So even though we're not using back office Betty's currently, there was so much to be learned just from kind of utilizing their processes about how to script things appropriately. What CRM software are you using for your follow-up systems? How are you following up with clients? This is something that we are in the midst of revising right now. How are we making sure that when somebody calls us, that we get the right person to call them back as soon as possible? How can we schedule consultations faster than they're getting scheduled now? How do we make sure that we're following up with a lead that there isn't an attorney available for in a short period of time? How many times are we going to follow up with that person? All kinds of nuance to that. How do you train your intake team? What are the kind of like stages and updates that you have to make sure that everybody is on the same page? Now, again, the reason that I just went through that about intake is because that just shows to me, one small part of your business, one very, very small part of your business, which is, how do I answer a damn phone, and how complex that is. Again, easy in the sense that, well, you just hit the, call button and then basically, or answer button, and then bam, you're on the phone with that person. But doing it the right way and having the right people do it, and creating and generating the right follow-up, is all very complex. And so how do we learn how to do the right type of follow-up? Well, I guess from an external perspective, what you could do is call some other law firms and basically say, how are they answering the phones? Call them up. How are they answering the phones? And I will tell you that as I was trying to get people to come to the Freedom Fighter Summit in October of last year, I called 200 plus law firms on the phone. And I'm here to tell you that there is a lot of people that are doing an absolutely shitty job answering their phone calls. I mean, just deplorable in terms of getting a live answer, deplorable in terms of people calling back. And I think it's one of those things where we all maybe imagine that our call answering is better than it a lot of times actually feels. And so I would say it's a good idea if you're not the only person at your firm to do some kind of secret shopper and calling your own office. But again, from an external perspective, you could call another law firm or call four law firms and see what are things that they're doing that I like. So that's one way to do it. But to me, the better way to do this is to basically sit down, talk with other lawyers that are in the business of criminal defense and see how they are answering the phone. See what type of technologies they are using to take down the data that they are receiving from that incoming caller. See how many times they're even getting phone leads versus leads from other platforms, Google My Business or Yelp listing or whatever it might be. Where are these lawyers getting their leads from? How are they hiring for this role? Getting behind the curtain is so critical to developing the business that lasts, to creating a sustainable business that can be improved. And so if you want a good measuring stick, if you want a good standard for how is, how are these other firms or lawyers doing, the best way to truly get that is to see again from behind the scenes how they are operating. There are some indicators that you can glean from the external, from the facade of those law firms. But it's only once you're in the back room, in the back office, talking with that other lawyer about the struggles and hardships and questions and experiments that they have tried that you really start to get a edge in terms of uh, taking some of those ideas and implementing them in your own business. So I think that the kind of simple thing that I want to leave you with today is that you've got to find a group. You've got to find a group of other lawyers that are really thinking through these issues. Go, you know the people in your local defense bar that you can bring in to have some of these intimate conversations about how your businesses are operating, to develop a trusting enough relationship to really share some of the things that are going well and poorly for you at your firm. Couple of opportunities that we have for this coming up are our intake mastery course, which is going to be on Tuesday, June the 4th from 12 until 2 o'clock. This is going to be online via Zoom. And Allison Williams from the Law Firm Mentor is going to be sharing some real keys to success of intake. She's an amazing speaker and law coach. And her course, her full course on intake mastery is part of what has allowed us to kind of revise our intake system at the office. It's been a huge part of our kind of innovations on the intake end of things over the last couple of years. The other thing that we have been doing through the Freedom Fighters group recently that has just been so amazing is our Freedom Fighters book club. And that is, we just had our third monthly book club meeting this past Friday. We went through the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. We've done Profit First. We've done the E-Myth. And it's just been an incredible opportunity to really engage with other lawyers. It's really been one of the most valuable things that I have done from a business side of things in the last year, is be a part of these kind of sidebar conversations with other lawyers that are really thinking through how they can make their business better. All of these things, the book club, intake mastery is free. There's no cost. Buy the book, I guess. That is a cost. If you really want to get the most out of it, buy the book. We've got some great books coming up here, starting with Why by Simon Sinek, Extreme Ownership, and then Chris Voss's, let me see, Never Split the Difference is our next read for our June meeting. And, just some incredible content, obviously, in the books, but the best part has really been just bouncing off how these ideas work with other lawyers. The Chris Voss book in particular for criminal defense, there's so many business applications from the Never Split the Difference book, but for criminal defense lawyers, it's a book that's just an amazing insight into negotiation. And obviously, all lawyers do a fair amount of negotiating, but if you're thinking about how to get better at getting deals on the table, so to speak, for your clients, incredible book, both from the practice area side of practice as well as the business side. But again, number one takeaway from today is don't stand outside like I did for the first 5 years of practice, trying to use as your measuring stick the facade of another law firm. Get inside the other lawyers in your area's business through conversing about business related topics. This is how we improve. This is how we raise the standard within our own firms, is really understanding the nitty gritty of what it takes to do that by being able to engage in an active conversation about what is working and what is not with the other lawyers in your community. So go beyond the facade, get behind the curtain, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.